Hey everyone, Rick here, and folks, welcome back to another Battlefields of Mana unit review. And here we go, folks. At this point, if you haven't watched any of the other videos, definitely check them out. But if you've watched them in order, watched them all so far, you've seen it all. You've seen all the core cavalry units, all the core infantry units. This is now the siege engine as part of the core armies for Regal Guard and Lunar Knights. That's what I mean by core. They have their range units, infantry units, melee and range, cavalry, melee and range. Now they have a siege engine. As you can see here, this is a Regal Guard siege engine, a catapult. That's what I mean by core units, because then there are mercenary units, and that is a whole nother section. We have lots of other unit types to talk about, but this is the last core unit, because mercenaries, you can only have one of each unit type in your army. But core units, you can have up to 4. So yeah, believe it or not, you can have up to 4 catapults in your army if you want. As you can see here, this is, as I mentioned, a Regal Guard catapult. You can tell by the banner bearer. So the banner bearer for a siege engine just has the generic symbol of the army. This has a sun on it. The Lunar Knight catapult looks almost exactly the same. They actually painted it a little darker, so the wood is a little darker, and the 2 other crew members have darker clothing. So in this case, you can see blue and kind of a white, kind of lighter colors, and here is a Lunar Knight banner bearer. I didn't bring over a Lunar Knight catapult and crew, but just imagine darker colors, kind of like this guy. So he would be there instead of that banner bearer. But otherwise, it's still 3 crew, and we'll get into the health points and how all that works. The base profile, the space it takes up on the battlefield is just the square that it occupies, which is a 40 by 40 millimeter square. And the crew, you can put them wherever you want. They don't even have to be adjacent to the catapult. They can be off the table if you want. That just, so it doesn't impede, they don't impede movement or line of sight or anything to the catapult. They're just there essentially as wound markers. Just like any other human infantry or cavalry figure, they have 2 HP each. We're kind of skipping ahead a bit, but if you look on the stat sheet where the health is listed as 6, that's because, you can identify it as 2 HP, 2 HP, 2 HP. So every 2 wounds, you remove a crew member, which I just love doing. Until all 3 crew members are dead, it has taken 6 or more wounds. So how does a catapult operate? And why does it cost 6 points? If you recall, the heavy cavalry, not to spoil it if you haven't seen that one, but heavy cavalry was the most expensive up to this point at 5 points. But we kind of justified that with all of the offensive and defensive capabilities. So the catapult, the siege engine, has a lot of special rules. Let's talk about them. So, first of all, attack dice. 12 when it fires. You read that right. This thing, when it hits with 12 attack dice. Or, in close combat, this is why you got to protect your siege engines, folks, only a single die per crew member remaining. So, if someone was able to get to your catapult and was attacking it in melee, the catapult crew does get to strike back, but they only get a die apiece. Combat strength. Again, when it fires, when in range, all of its attack dice are +1 to a maximum of 6, as always. But imagine that, 12 attack dice, all +1. That could wipe out an entire unit. Also, -1 in melee. So again, if someone was able to get to your catapult and is attacking the crew do get to strike back with an attack die apiece, but they're all -1 to their attack dice. Now, additionally, armor. They have a 2 armor in range, and that's like as if the crew were ducking down behind the siege engine itself. So it still does take 3s or more to hit the catapult from a distance. However, only armor 1 in melee. It's a little tougher to hide. It's easier to hide from an arrow behind the catapult than it is someone running at you with a sword, kind of ducking around, weaving through the catapult itself. So only 2s or more necessary to hit in melee. Defensive special ability actually is really good against range, and this was so because catapults are so expensive. You don't want some archer unit zipping up and just firing at will, and the catapult, you lose those 6 points almost instantly. No. So the defense, again, is easier for the crew to hide behind the wooden structure of the catapult against range. They do get a +1 to their defense dice against range. So not only do you have to roll 3s or better when you're shooting the catapult to hit them, but when they roll their defense dice, all their defense dice are +1. So it's still not impossible to take out a catapult at range, but it is harder. Now the range value itself, there is a minimum there. This is the first time we've seen a minimum. It is a minimum of 4 inches. And when we talk about the template itself, no part of the template can be within 4 inches of the catapult. And it has a max range of 18 inches away, which is insane. Movement of 2, so you can roll this thing. It does not move very fast, 2 inches per movement action. And that means if you use both actions on movement, it can move up to 4 inches. So if you did want to wheel it to a better position, that is possible. But we will talk about the catapult special ability rules in just a second. But as a spoiler, you cannot shoot the catapult in the same turn that you moved, even just once. So it is a very stationary thing. And then initiative is +0, because again, you only typically roll initiative for close combat situations. Again, this crew does not want to fight any soldiers in close combat. They have a 0 bonus for their initiative. Health again is 6, and that's denoted with the crew members. So there's 3 of them, each with 2 HP. You remove them 1 at a time for every 2 wounds the catapult takes. And then the ability itself, the catapult ability, folks, on my ability sheet, this catapult special ability is like almost an entire page. So essentially, here you go. 3-inch template. You put this anywhere within 18 inches. I believe it's just the hole itself. You put the hole over something within 18 inches. And the reason I mention that is because you can't put this where, you know, the hole, you would say, oh, minimum 4-inch range. Okay, I'll put the whole 4 inches. No, because then part of this template is closer to the catapult than 4 inches. So minimum range is the edge of the template cannot be within 4 inches of the center of the catapult. Range in Battlefields of Mana, apart from spells, but catapult range and archer range, crossbow range, is all taken from the center of, in this case, the catapult, or the center of the banner bearer of a unit of crossbows or what have you. So it's center of the catapult, out up to 4 inches, edge of the template up to 4 inches away from the center of the catapult. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, you may recognize these from a different game, but the way this works is you'll roll the accuracy die first. You have a 1 in 3 chance, essentially, of it not deviating. You don't roll them both, because wouldn't that suck if you had that 1 in 3 chance and actually did hit, but it also misfired. So what happens is you roll this first. If it hits, that's it. It hits. If it deviates, then at that point you roll how far it deviates, or 1 in 6 chance of misfiring. Now, the misfire could be a 1, the engine is destroyed. You roll a d6. On a 1, the siege engine is just destroyed. 2 to 3, it takes a wound. 4 to 6, nothing happens. It simply does not fire this turn. But what happens for the actual attack? So wherever this goes, let's say it hits, anything below the hole takes 12 attack dice that are all +1, and they have the volley special ability. So what is volley? Volley is the ranged equivalent of assault. So volley says any 6s you roll in a ranged attack explode. Now those are natural 6s, not 6s that become 6s due to the +1 to the attack dice. But any natural 6s explode. You get more dice for each of those. If those dice also end up being 6s, those explode. The chain can go on and on. 12 dice. They're all +1. 6s explode for everything under the hole. Everything else not under the hole take shrapnel hits, which is simply a d6. Roll a d6, that unit takes that many hits, this single figure over here takes that many hits, roll for them as well. Roll individually a d6, and they take that many unmodified attack hits. Kind of similar to collision, if you remember that heavy cav special ability. So when it deviates, you know, it could deviate somewhere where something is under the hole. It could even be a friendly figure. It could even be the catapult itself. Whatever the case may be, 12 dice, all +1, 6s explode under the hole. Everything not under the hole, d6, unmodified attacks. And that is no matter where this thing ends up. Or, again, it could misfire. I think that is it. There are just a whole bunch of things. A lot of the rules that I'm looking at in the catapult ability sheet are all just things we already talked about, how defense works and whatnot. Line of sight is not required. You can place it anywhere on the battlefield, so that's pretty fantastic. Yep. Just looking at, make sure I don't miss anything. Defenders also do not benefit from cover or any defensive special abilities or modifiers. Yikes. That's pretty sweet. All right, folks, that is it. I mean, that's why the Siege Engine costs 6 points, because if it hits big time. All right, folks, this was a long one, but we had a lot to cover, and this is a big piece of the puzzle. Consider including a Siege Engine, or 2 or 3 or 4, to your Battlefields of Mana army today. And thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it. And until next time.